Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Supply Chain Podcast. My name is Tom Raftery, and with me on the show today, I have my special guest, Aylin. Aylin, welcome to the podcast. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Tom, for having me. Again, my name is Aylin Basom. I am the CEO of Supplier, which is a market-leading SaaS provider of supplier diversity and ESG data and management solutions. And we help organizations to track and manage responsible sourcing, providing them valuable data and insights to really drive their business growth. So really excited to be here with you today, Tom.
So, Aylin, tell me a little more about the genesis of Supplier. How old is the organization? When and why was it started? And who are your kind of typical customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, we have been in business for about 20 years. And our mission as an organization is really to become a world leader in providing innovative SaaS solutions for transparent and responsible sourcing within the global supply chain. And at the core of our mission is to really aim of connecting buyers to diverse and sustainable suppliers and empowering businesses with that, insights into supplier diversity and ESG data. We've, learned this very quickly that data fragmentation really exists in ESG as a whole, and we're certainly helping with that. We are the leading provider, like I mentioned, the diversity and ESG data. And one of the big things that are different about us is the fact that we have the largest database of diverse, sustainable, and social suppliers, which includes about 4 million suppliers with over 5 million certifications. And we work with really customers across industries, really, but mostly Fortune 1000 companies currently utilizes Supplier solutions. And from the perspective of, for, the audience that have been doing the supplier diversity for a long time, there is a group called $1 Billion Roundtable. So over 50% of the $1 Billion Roundtable companies utilizes us today. Who are they? They're mostly Fortune, 100 companies that spend $1 billion or more annually with diverse suppliers to really, they're committed and we're helping them to establish and advance their supplier diversity and ESG initiatives effectively and strategically.
Okay, and why? As in, why is it important for them, particularly, I guess, to invest in programs like this?
Yeah, great question. We've actually have been doing research for a long time. And that's part of us giving back to communities and really giving back to us, also our industry. So we have been doing the State of Supplier Diversity report 6 years in a row now. And one of the questions we ask there is actually that, right? Why companies are doing supplier diversity, programs and investing in the first place. The good news is we've been seeing 6 years in a row that companies are actually doing this because it's really driving business benefits. This year, we've actually seen 81% of the companies said, because it's also aligned with our corporate culture and, workforce, inclusiveness and, it's aligned with their values, which is great to hear. They've also been seeing really strong business results. Actually, almost 70% of them said supplier diversity programs and responsible sourcing as a whole, improving their supply chain competitiveness, which, Tom, after everything happened with COVID, supply chain competitiveness as well as stability, it makes a big difference for companies. And then another interesting thing was over 50% of the companies said it also enhances their brand image, which I thought was, interesting.
Nice.
We also look at some data around the mandatory, like, is it mandatory? Are they doing this because they have to? And that has been something that we also track last 6 years. And it has been continuously going down. The reason that they're doing it because their customers are requiring it or because of the government compliance, those are the ones that are keep going down, which is, again, what we would like to see, right?
Yep.
They're doing it because they're seeing business benefits and results. It's not checking the box anymore. And again, more and more companies every year coming back and saying that it is one more thing, right? That is impacting their business in a positive way.
And is this just something for the big organization who are in the billion dollar club, or is it trickling down, or where does that kind of cut off, or does it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, we haven't looked at that as well. No, any company that have a supply chain that are actually looking to diversify their supply chain, they're actually investing in supplier diversity. And the good news is, although we've looked at even companies, let's say 100 million and above, right, revenue companies, of course, companies that have $1 billion or $10 billion revenue have larger supply chains per se. But regardless, it doesn't matter how small the company is from the revenue perspective. If they have a supply chain and that is driving their business, again, growth and stability, they're seeing benefits for investing in supplier diversity programs for sure.
Okay, and do the programs or the benefits, do they differ across industries and regions?
Yeah, so what we've done, there's 2 studies that we've actually done. From the perspective of business benefits per se, is not that much different from the US versus out of US. But what supplier diversity means and some of the rules around that might be different, of course, country by country. For example, supplier diversity does not only mean that investing in suppliers that are, of course, minority owned and, woman owned, veteran owned, maybe disabled owned companies, but also it is, spending money with small companies or local companies, right? And in Europe, in certain, countries, you have to, especially in Europe, as well as the outside of Europe, diversity might mean different things. What you can ask about the business, the questions that you can ask, the data that you can collect is different. But again, from the perspective of holistically, if you're looking at that, woman versus, or small business is going to be actually translating in any country. So we've looked at that from the business benefits perspective, and we've seen, again, similar results, regardless of which country that is doing this, even though the supplier diversity as a whole might have different meanings per se.
Okay. And what would be some of the best practices that you've observed in successful supplier diversity and sustainability initiatives?
Yeah, so we have actually done another research, and that one was about best practices research as we said it. And we wanted to look at what are some of the most successful supplier diversity programs and leaders are doing maybe different, right? And based on our best practices research, we've had some really key findings. One of them was around the fact that the leaders don't really chase RFPs or focusing on quotas like we have to have one diverse supplier on each RFP. Instead, leaders are really taking more proactive approach that starts with being very clear about what the value supplier diversity can offer to the company. And in addition, they're not doing this in a vacuum. They're actually partnering with business units, leaders, right? They're not just doing it as this is a supplier diversity program or a manager's initiative. No, it's actually a company initiative. And they're really speaking the language of business, which is usually dollars and cents. You know that, Tom, right?
Sure.
They also regularly report on the impact of their program at the company and the business unit level. And they're really influencing, right? They're actually, looking at kind of the specific purposes, maybe identifying ways to innovate together or planning out the future opportunities more. One of the things that I've also seen a lot, I can give many, many examples from companies, again, globally across industries. The leaders are really actually also looking at their upcoming renewals for contract. They're not just waiting till last minute and say, you know what, we have a contract, is now needs to be renewed and we need to find some kind of a diverse supplier. No, they're actually so much more proactive, looking at it 1 to 2 years out. So they have plenty of time to plan and find those either diverse or local small, suppliers to really, again, diversify their supply chain. Another one was we've been looking more and more at kind of interesting data around what companies' core key success metrics looks like. It's not always just revenue, right? We have a company that is a car company as well as one of the software companies. They say Innovation is the core to who we are. It is very important for us. And these leaders are actually capitalizing on that and bringing diverse suppliers in at the product design phase to collaborate and discuss how best to achieve a shared vision for the final product. So they're not, again, just looking for dollars and cents. They're just looking at what are some of the ways that we can drive really the business outcomes that we need through, diversifying our supply chain. Another thing that we found, we've been also partnering with other organizations that does, different research. And we all know by 2045, more than half of the US population is expected to be diverse. That's a fact, right? A US census, everybody can find that. Well, what we've realized, targeting fast growing demographic is critical for business growth. Think about a retailer, right? We've actually had a meeting with Container Store, right? It wasn't a supplier diversity leader that is driving this. It's actually the chief merchandising officer is the one that is driving this, because diverse suppliers play strategic role in supply chains to help companies attract diverse consumers with that innovative assortment of either services or products that speaks to them. So if a company is looking to grow, and we know that by 2045, more than half of the US population is expected to be diverse, that's kind of a key component that companies start actually seeing. Another fact that I will give, according to Nielsen Global Corporate Sustainability Report, 66% of consumers are willing to pay a premium for products and services from companies that are committed to social and environmental responsibility. And that's really big, right? So this is kind of the new set of buyers that are coming in and saying, we would rather to pay more, because this is that important to us. And then the last but not least, Bain and Company report. They actually reported that diverse suppliers have an annual retention rate that is 20% higher on average than non-diverse suppliers.
Right.
Well, guess what? If you're looking to ensure that your supply chain, again, is stable, that you can actually have, the retention, stability, and, of course, visibility in your supply chain, you really want to ensure that you utilize a solution like ours, also diversify your supply chain. And then one other comment that I'll make with ESG, what we're seeing, one of the drivers, Tom, is there are multiple and growing regulations and guidelines for ESG. You know this, right? We use, CSRD, and, California just came out with new legislation to disclose sustainability disclosures. And these are all requiring companies to have robust solution and accurate data. And this is, part of, they have to do this, right? And we also know supply chains have gotten more complex and more critical, and making visibility into them and even more challenging. So those are some of the kind of the key things that we're seeing, not just about it's, we need to do our ESG reporting and do, supplier diversity programs because it's good for you. But there are other things at play here, right? That the companies are definitely keep in mind. And that's where we see the growth coming from.
Sure. And you guys in Supplier IO, you are now expanding very much into ESG. What was it that prompted this decision?
Listen, we've been big on really listening our customers. And I've mentioned to you, we work with most Fortune 1000 companies, global, and we have customer advisory board, and I'm always on the road, our head of product. We constantly hear from our customers and say, what are some of the challenges that we can help them solve? And some of the ESG challenges are real and things that we've solved previously on supplier diversity. And they were asking us and saying, hey, there's a fragmented data on certifications and ratings and scores in ESG, right? They're having to go to so many places. And there's, these sustainability certifications, ratings and scores and other data that is so fragmented across various providers and data sources. It is very hard for them to do the reporting. And they come to us for that problem for supplier diversity, right? There's all these certifying agencies, over 300 of them in US. They can't go to each of them to get that. So when they came to us and said, well, you're already doing supplier diversity, which is helping us really under ESG, which is under S, right?
Yeah.
Social. are reporting, why are you not doing more? And that was one of the kind of the catalysts. And we said, we really can invest in this and grow. The second problem was, really around, again, supply chain visibility, right? I've mentioned that it is really challenging. Well, for us, what we said was for ESG, same thing. For them to be really successful and having a good ESG program, they have to assess the sustainability of their supply chain, and they need to have strong data and tools. And as part of that, again, we can help them, using multiple data points, which includes identifying their suppliers with existing certifications and ratings. And then they need to have a way to supplement this data and solicit suppliers to give them information. Well, we already have a supplier registration platform, right? And so we said, we've been collecting this diversity data. Why don't we collect more, from them? And so we've kind of opened the doors, which was a very natural, right, extension of what we do. And, that was kind of a big thing for us. The third one was companies came to us and said, really, we need to identify our high-risk suppliers. Regulations are coming down. We definitely need to ensure that our brand image, our reputation is at risk. And we really need to make sure that we don't assess ourselves in a vacuum, but also, again, ensure that we can look at our supply chain, identify who are high-risk suppliers, and then see how we compare to our peers. Well, we were already doing this, Tom, again, on the supplier diversity side. So we just kind of invested in and said, okay, we certainly can help you with that. And now this is something that we're very excited and proud about for CDP data, right? That's one of the most recognized, ratings for suppliers. Now we have all the CDP data in our database. B Corp certification, that's for social suppliers. We've actually signed a, partnership. Now we have all the social suppliers in our database. So now companies can come in and say, okay, I want to first know and get a visibility in my supply chain, figure out who's diverse, sustainable, and social suppliers. Hey, I want to spend more with these suppliers. I want to know more, about them. They use our database, almost like Google Analytics. They can find more. They can also figure out what their spend looks like, right, in each of these categories. But they now have an ability to also identify who are some of their high-risk suppliers are. Tom, you've probably heard companies says, it's everywhere. I get a package from anywhere that says our net zero goal is X date, right?
Yeah.
Well, for them to be able to really meet these, net zero goal, they're going to have to know their supplier carbon analytics. So that's our latest investment was around, okay, we know for any company to be able to reach their net zero goals, they need to be able to assess, track, and report the impact of their suppliers' GHG emission. And they need to be able to identify who are the suppliers that are biggest emitters and track that scope 3 GHG emissions and have the capability to compare year-over-year trends and have the visibility to see it either by business unit or region or industry. But that was also a customer ask and demand. And that was the latest thing that we've invested in. So again, as I tell all my team, we're not Apple today and then Orange tomorrow, but we are going to expand of our offerings. We're going to do more good in the world. We were already able to measure economic impact of companies investing in diverse suppliers. We were already helping them see what their impact is in communities, GDP, taxes, wages, how many jobs they've created. Now we also have the capability to show their impact in environment, right? And so these are all very important things. And that's what we've been working on so far.
Nice. And something I've been saying for a long time, I think I was at an event back in 2013 or 2014, and I remember the organization at the time, it was Ariba. It was at Ariba Live in 2013 or 2014 in Rome. And I remember at the time they were talking about how they launched this way to make sure that you had no forced labor in your supply chain. And I asked them, I said, that's all very nice, but what about the impact of carbon? Is there any way that I can look down through my supplier base and see the implications of choosing supplier A over supplier B for my carbon impact? So is that what you're saying you can do now?
Yes, 100% we can do it. Exactly what you just said. Beautifully said. And we take it even one step further. So when I mentioned, you want to assess first, right? Within your supply chain, within your existing suppliers, you want to know, who are the highest emitters are. And often companies want to not only identify them, but then go to that, whatever ABC supplier to say, we spend money with you. We realize that we don't have any information inside about your sustainability, right? Initiatives, processes in place. And you're one of our companies that we identified as, biggest emitters. And we really want to make sure that we work with you against our net zero goals, because we won't be able to achieve that without working together. So that's big part of it. But the second piece is, if that supplier did not actually change the way that they were doing it, then that company is really in a place where they have to find an alternative solution, alternative supplier. And that's the kind of the second challenge I would say that we're solving for, right?
Yes.
Being able to actually provide them that alternative. Often I say, people are asking me, what are some of the reasons that companies come to us for? And I say, oh, well, we help companies increase supply chain competitiveness and reduce risk and ensure continuity. And then that is follow-up question regarding the, net zero always. And then we just say, yes, we certainly help them meet net zero and diverse spend goals, through not just giving them the calculations, but really the visibility and actionable insight. That's kind of the key word. So they can do something with it, right? It's one thing to have the visibility, but the other is really being able to do something about it.
Fantastic. And what role does technology play in all this?
Huge. So there are a couple of things. One is, I would say, data piece, right? I mentioned the data fragmentation being a big issue, in this industry. And that's one of our biggest differentiators. That no company out there, no competitors can come close to it, is the fact that we're powering our solutions, I mentioned, with the world's largest and most comprehensive database of certified suppliers. And what we realized through our research, supplier diversity and sustainability data isn't stagnant. So it's not something that the companies can just, have this on an Excel sheet. And I hate to say this, we've done all these research and there are companies still trying to fix this with a, Excel sheet. It is just not possible. These information constantly being updated with new ratings and scores and certifications, and suppliers need to be regularly engaged to report on their progress and just think about it, like how many of those potentially suppliers are either, ownership changes, certifications expires. There are all these things that are happening. So again, there needs to be a centralized solution. You have to make that easy for any company. I'm not the one who says this, our customers actually told us this, and I love this saying. They say, you're the Google of supplier diversity and ESG solution. It has to be so easy, like Google, right? You have to go in there and say, I'm looking for a, woman-owned marketing company in San Diego, California, wherever it might be, right? All the way down to zip code. It has to be just easy, to find it. And then the other piece that I would, make a comment about, not just the solution itself, but the data. We built our database through over 400 sources, includes government agencies, certifying agencies, corporations, our AI capabilities, and some of the largest companies are using our registration platform for their suppliers. That also continues to feed our database as well. And that's a big piece of it. But the second piece of it, the accuracy of that data, as I was mentioning, right? These companies are actually making some public announcements, commitments about, and they do this reporting, right? That they have to be able to rely on accurate data. So we do a lot around data and certification validation, making sure that we do regular updates, right? Based on our research, and think about, we have millions and millions of data, 25% of the data gets, like I said, changes a minimum a year. So it's really, really important, a problem that we're solving for. And, you have to have a solution for that. Again, I wish I could say that you could just do it. No, you really need to have the right kind of a solution as well as the database to be able to count on that. And then the last but not least, I will say, the organizations that we work with, they don't want to go to CDP for sustainability rating, then B Corp, like we were just talking about, right? To see if their suppliers social. And they don't want to go to, again, I don't know, an MSDC or WeBank to see if their suppliers diverse. They don't want to go to all these. It's not also easy to manage, right? So through our solution, they utilize one, right, platform, which brings the visibility that they need for their supply chain, as well as to be able to really scale, right, their programs and reporting capabilities. So those are the reasons I would say that they need it.
Okay, sure. And I mean, you mentioned AI there, and there's been a huge uptick in interest in AI since ChatGPT was launched this time last year. It was the 30th of November last year. Do you see that playing a role? Because I can imagine if you trained ChatGPT or, a large language model on your data, the search that you talked about there, looking for a small business woman owned in San Diego at X zip code, that would be trivial for something like that. Is that something you're looking at as well?
We do. So we have a very strong and scalable technology platform that is multi-tenant. It's API enabled for easy integration with, both partners and customer ecosystems. But that was one of the things that our solution had to have some AI capabilities, not from the perspective of, where we have to ensure that the data is correct, right? Like that has to have the certification. So when company says, I'm certified in X, we actually have that certification, a copy of it in it, right? So that's something that it's black or white, right? Like it's there.
Yep.
But to your point, the search engine capabilities, right? That's really nice to be able to have those, making it easy and be able to utilize that AI capabilities, to ensure that we take the excuses away, right? Like we make it so easy that that's why our customer says it's the Google of it. It just needs to be very easy to be able to reach that data. And that's some of the things that we use our AI capabilities on. The other thing that we use, I have been hearing constantly from our customers, and they say, Aylin, there is this supplier fatigue about giving information, right? There's so many platforms there's so many places that they're having to go and often saying the same thing. So one of the things that we also use is our capability to, if they've already had it somewhere that they've actually on their website, let's say, and they have it on their certification. And if we can actually kind of take that or some of the information that we can gather about them and we can pre-populate it about them, of course they check it, but it just makes it easier, for them. So we also kind of worked around that as well, not just make it easier for customers, but how can we make it also easier for suppliers? And then, that has been obviously a big piece for us to be able to kind of solve for.
Nice. And I should throw in at this point for any listeners who are interested, the fact that I am a small business, minority owned, minority as in I'm an immigrant. So if anyone is looking for any services, feel free to jump on board. But tell me do you have any customer success stories you can speak to?
Yes, absolutely. One comment that I want to make, Tom. So if the company is sustainable or, social or small or diverse in any of these categories, they can go to our website, www.supplier.io, because, our name is supplier.io and it's, the URL is that too. Super easy. They can go to our website and register. We do not charge suppliers. That's not our business model. We collect that data, and the way that we think of ourselves is we're the bridge opening doors more for them, hopefully for more business, right? And so our business model is all based on that. So if there is any way that, again, they can come, fill out their information, and then after that, all we're doing is making them visible to any companies that are searching potentially for their services. And again, we don't charge them. That's not our business model. So I just wanted to be clear about that. And, for anyone that is listening and interested in just, coming to our site, you will have a place where it says for suppliers, and, it's just quick and you certainly can, fill out that information.
Noted. Thank you. And
Yeah.
customer success stories?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I wanted to make that easy for them. So, yes, we have so many customer success stories. A couple of them that I will say. One is around, I've kind of mentioned kind of the innovations, right? That they have done, so much, both the car company as well as, I think it's okay for me to kind of say, because it was part of our best practice search, that Facebook, Meta now, right, talked about how they utilize actually supplier diversity as part of them achieving those business outcomes, including actually innovation, as part of that. I've also, mentioned a little bit about, of course, Container Store. That's a, important, definitely story, as well. Other ones that I can mention is we actually have this is one that was at Wall Street Journal, so it's okay for me to share. Apollo, which is one of the, big PE, right, companies, and their company goal was around leveraging supplier diversity to unlock innovation and grow in new markets. And they also wanted to grow their diverse spend. And the solution that they were looking for was, how can we have supply chain visibility and understand our true diverse spend, but also identify more of those sustainable, diverse, suppliers as well. And they had a goal to hit $1 billion, and they hit that goal in just 1 year. And already
Wow.
committed to doubling their goal. And this was a big deal. And it was on the Wall Street Journal, and they had an article about that. And to me, that's a really fantastic kind of the use case. I'll give a completely different example. M&T Bank, their company goal was, hey, we really need to report on ESG progress. We need to grow as a supportive member of communities that we serve. And, again, they had not that much visibility into their supply chain, and they really needed to understand their current purchase activities. And they went from no program in place to industry leading in just 3 years. And they helped a lot of local banks get even more connected to the community. And I love the story because it was more, again, about not just about, of course, yes, we need to report and we need to have a tool and data and so forth, but it was about also really kind of connecting with the communities that they served. And they were able to do that. And I love, that piece. And then we have other customers that actually won, these amazing awards. One of them being Hyatt Hotels. They, won the top supply chain projects for 2023, which is fantastic. And they've also, again, invested in supplier diversity, doubled down on, and truly seen the results of, how their business can actually benefit and really see the business result that they were hoping for. So there's millions of these. Of course, we talk with our customers, like I said, all the time, and just hearing these stories in different industries. You asked me that earlier and said, do you see differences, maybe, either industries or regions? And no, I mean, they're what the business outcome they might be looking for, it might change a little bit. But the fact that, they're all getting the business growth and the results and the KPIs that they've actually identified, winning it through supplier diversity and responsible sourcing are great to see, and across industries for sure.
Fantastic. We're coming towards the end of the podcast now, Aylin. Is there any question I haven't asked that you wish I had, or any aspect of this we haven't touched on that you think it's important for people to be aware of?
Yes, only thing that I would say, we've talked about importance of finding alternative sourcing options and, getting insights. And one thing that I didn't mention so much about, and there's a new thing that we're actually invested in because of the fact that companies also is asking for detailed risk assessment. They want to have a 360 view on their top suppliers. And this is something that I would say I'm seeing more and more of. In-depth assessment, especially in all aspects of ESG against 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, and, making sure that it's aligned with the, SFDR regulations, best practices. This is more and more coming in the picture. And again, companies have been asking for that. One thing that I would say is they're not going to do ESG risk assessment on all their suppliers. But companies that are looking to really get a 360 view on their top suppliers, right? That can be top 50, top 100. That is really consists of their 85% of their spend, right? Really need that next level tier of insight per se. And that is another thing that we had to invest in. So the companies need to really think about of, do we have, of course, the supply chain visibility, identify where our gaps are, where we should be investing next, and so forth. But then also the higher spend it is, those are, more obviously risky, right? And so they're just asking for that additional, more detailed insight. And that's the new thing that we've actually kind of invested through a partnership that have a capability on. So just wanted to bring that up. And that's something that the company should be thinking about.
Okay, interesting. Cool. Aylin, if people would like to know more about yourself or any of the things we discussed in the podcast today, where would you have me direct them?
Yeah, I mean, our website would be great. We would love them to actually connect with us, www.supplier.io. We have a lot of information, of course, about us, but there's also a little link there that just says talk to an expert. So someone within our organization will definitely connect with them. And we would love to hear from anyone that has either a question or, would love to learn more. In addition to it, again, if you're a supplier and you're looking to kind of really expand your visibility and you're also interested in being part of our, of course, database, that's another, again, way that you can engage with us. And that's also on our website. We certainly look forward to hearing from them.
Fantastic. Aylin, that's been really interesting. Thanks a million for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much, Tom, for having me. I really appreciate it.